After working 8 years in restaurants, he became a self taught software engineer without having a university degree and as an immigrant in Germany. He's also co founder and engineer manager at his own startup, Codesphere. In this third episode, I interviewed him to take me through his journey, to understand his struggles, and to understand what philosophy he has to persevere. This is the Charlotte Martin podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode with Roman Frolov. Roman, I found you on LinkedIn. The first time I've seen you was on my LinkedIn homepage. You posted a picture of your laptop with a piece of code during your barista shift. That was 7 years ago. And you said that you in 2015 started to learn how to code during your barista shift. And now you're an engineer manager
Yeah.
in your own startup. This is super inspiring, first of all. And that's why I reached out to you, just to get more inspiration from you, hear your story, and see how you did it. So take me through your journey and how did it all start?
Um, my journey started when I was 14 years old. My mom, she basically started an ice cream shop, gelateria, which is an Italian ice cream shop. And she needed some help, and I needed some cash for my hobbies. And so I basically visited my mom's ice cream shop, and I think it was like just a pretty much random occasion where she needed help, and I just came and helped her, and she realized that, oh, actually, like, he's like old enough to be useful. So that's how I started working with my mom at her ice cream shop when I was 14 and still studying at school. So I was doing it just after hours, um, and that started pretty much a quite long career in restaurant business for me. Because after that, I spent the next 7 years working in cafes, restaurants, bars, clubs, hotels, in many different places.
What was your motivation behind it? Was it rather cash or just the that you love to work?
I definitely enjoyed working. It's a it was a lot of fun to meet people, especially I would say, especially when I was working in a hotel. Just the ability to have a conversation with people from all around the world, that was very interesting for me. Cash, I mean, yeah, I needed cash. I needed cash for my hobbies initially, and then after finishing school, I enrolled into a university, and my parents didn't have cash to pay for it, so I had to pay for it myself. So I was working full time at a restaurant while studying and paying for my education. That didn't last long though. I only studied for like 6 months, and then I dropped out.
From university?
Yes, it didn't meet my expectations.
Mm.
So somehow in my head, I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I grew up watching movies about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. My parents are like, even though they're not entrepreneurs right now, they used to be in the past. Um, and so I also wanted to do something of my own, and I thought that the university would help me. So originally, even though I watched those movies about Steve and Bill, I never thought of doing something in the IT industry because I grew up with a mindset that you need to have math brains to do sciences, which turned out to be completely wrong later on, but I only discovered it later in my life. Um, so I enrolled into a university. My major was hospitality, so it's like restaurants and hotels. I studied there for 1 semester, and then I realized that that's not exactly my thing. Since I was already working at a hotel, I realized that I was learning at the job more than the university. So I
Mhm.
decided to switch majors, and my new major was entrepreneurship. and finance. And that sounded just perfect. Well, when I started it, after a few months, I realized that no, it's not perfect. It's again not what I wanted. There was a lot of dry theory from people who never did anything related to entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And yeah, that frustrated me.
Yeah, I feel also like universities kind of outdated in the sense that it's not relevant for businesses. So, I mean, I've learned a lot during university, but it's still only 10% what I've learned I can apply to my current job, maybe. And maybe that's something which needs to be changed in university and also in school, the way the whole system, how children learn things. So
Absolutely.
then you learned how to code by yourself instead of going to university.
Um, that didn't happen immediately.
Mm.
So when I dropped out of university, that was the year. Well, I think 2013. And I had no idea what to do next. So it wasn't like, oh, I found my purpose in life and I dropped out of university and started pursuing it. No, it was just a shot in the dark. Um, I knew that that's not the way, but I didn't know what's the right way is. Um, so still, I did that. I dropped out, and I continued working at restaurants. Um, Actually, for only a year because later on I was fired from my job at a bar for not attending meetings. There were some like big like meetings where people from like food and beverage department had to attend, and I skipped like I don't know 2 or 3 of them. Apparently, they were important. Yeah, and I was fired for that. Um, but yeah, I was already 18. I just started attending gym, and so I started my own online store where we shipped some sport goods from the US and we're selling them basically through social media and in person in gym, and that went okay-ish, but when you're working with a physical stock, you need to invest more money so that you can grow the revenue. Without that, you can it's the revenue grows very very slow. So since I invested my personal money and I didn't have any investors, nor anyone who is even knows anyone who would be willing to invest, I realized that that's not very scalable. So I converted the online store into a public page, which was just publishing some content about fitness. That was still 2000. It was 2014, I think.
That was when social media was not too big.
Yeah.
So how did the social media game change?
Um, there were much fewer platforms, so messengers were just getting started. I think um, I downloaded Telegram, and I literally it was a ghost town. I downloaded it and I was alone. And then yeah, it took only years for messengers to kind of rise to the point where they became mainstream. But back then everyone was using like Facebook, or in
Mm.
my case, like the platform I used was vk.com, which is a Russian analogy of Facebook.
That's crazy
uh,
because Telegram is, I think, the number one messenger in Russia, right?
it's pretty huge right now. Yeah, it's not only in Russia right now, I think
I think
many places.
people in Germany use WhatsApp rather.
Yeah,
That's why.
that's I had to download it when I
Yeah,
moved.
same with Telegram. Nobody has it. At least people use Signal. I'm not sure if they. I still use WhatsApp, but a lot of people use Signal. But
Some of my colleagues use Telegram
oh, nice.
for
Okay.
German.
So yeah, where were we? Oh yeah, your social media account. So you try to push content there.
So this page grew to 150,000 followers, and I was making ad revenue. And in the meantime, I was just playing Warcraft. That was my dream life coming true. And that lasted for I think like a year or two, maybe. I even went to live in Egypt for like 4 months during that time. But yeah, slowly I saw a decline in ad revenues. Um, there are many factors that could have caused it. I don't know what's the main factor.
May I ask how
Um,
much how much money you did from the social media account with the ad revenue?
Back then it was like from 500 to 700 euro per month.
Wow.
And I was living in my own apartment, so I didn't pay rent. So for me, it was
Yeah.
like pretty decent.
Damn, that's very interesting. Especially back in the days, people used to go to the convention. I mean, still the conventional way, having like this 40-hour job, getting money by giving their time basically. But it's so interesting to me, the whole social media world. You can scale it up. You have to put like one post, and depending on how much traffic you have, you get this much revenue. It's amazing.
It was like, I wouldn't say it was at the beginning, but it was pretty early on into this ad market that developed, and it was like a wild west in the beginning because there were no rules. It's like you could literally advertise anything, and people advertise things that are now prohibited, like that they like brand deals wouldn't be allowed to be listed on the platform.
And I think this is very interesting that you started very early on doing this kind of thing. I mean, when I was 17 or 18, I would never come up with, you know, posting things online because that was so new. Nobody was putting themselves online. That was not a thing, at least in Germany, but probably because we're more conservative. I mean, in America, they Twitter every day, post every day. I think in Germany, it's a little bit more, yeah, conservative. But that you were in such a young age and already were so entrepreneurial and just try things out all by yourself, risking it without knowing anything what the future will bring. I think this is so interesting to me.
They fired me. I didn't want to get another job.
Well, okay, yeah, maybe. Well, there's a silver lining then. So when you get fired, there's always a silver lining to find a better job.
Yeah, so
How did you find yourself being interested in technology?
so it was the year 2016. um i was I returned back to restaurants, and I was working there for around 2 years now. I started as a waiter, and I was slowly progressing. I became a bartender, and then I became an administrator of a restaurant. And I had a vacation, and I went to the south just to relax and switch a bit. And Yeah, vacation was going fine. And then on one day, I was feeling particularly bored, and I was just scrolling through my newsfeed, and I just randomly stumbled upon a presentation by some crazy guy about colonizing Mars. Um,
Who might this
w-
be?
and Yeah, that was like kind of that was interesting. Since I was bored, I just stayed in my hotel room and I just watched this presentation. Um, and Yeah, I just watched the whole thing, and it was very interesting and somewhat inspiring to me.
What was
Um,
so interesting about it?
just the potential of us as a human species,
Hmm.
just the realization for me how much we can do, that we're already talking about colonizing Mars, and we have tech that allows that. um, that was kind of eye-opening for me because, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was my opinion on the moon landing and all the all the things that happened in 80s or 70s, but somehow in my brain it just didn't click until I saw this presentation. Um,
That was also when Elon was not that popular as now.
yeah, it's like I had no idea who this guy is. Like,
Mm.
never heard the name before. Back then, I only knew Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, but these guys are like they are from the previous
Generation, yeah.
generation. Yeah, I mean Mark Zuckerberg, obviously. Yeah, I'm Mark Zuckerberg.
Mm.
Like I watched the movie Social Network as well.
Oh, no, that's a nice
Um,
one.
yeah, so Elon, I returned from vacation and I started doing my research on the guy because, damn, how can you build rockets and go to space as a private person? Um, And so I read that he developed his first video game when he was 13. And in 2016, I was already 21. And it was kind of offensive for me that he, he developed a game at 13 and I, at 21, never tried coding in my life. Um, and I felt like if he did it at 13, that at 21 I should be able to as well. And so I went to YouTube and I found a course which is called CS50, which is a course by Harvard, an introduction to computer science by Professor J. Malin. And I started this course on YouTube in my native Russian language. I did 3 lectures. And then I realized that, yeah, there are so many terms. It kind of doesn't make sense to continue in my native language. So I switched to English, which was quite challenging because I'm not bilingual from birth. My native language is Russian, and then English is the learned language. And so the lectures of CS50 I was watching for like a lecture that is 40 minutes. I was watching it for 3 hours because I needed to translate every single, not every single, but most of the words.
Damn.
And it took a lot of time and patience. And I was like, yeah, that
People
was
people would
persistence.
have yeah, people would have quit already if it's in another language. If I would imagine learning a new learning a new skill in another language like Spanish and oh my goodness, no, I would have dropped immediately. So what was the reason that you persisted?
Um, I mean, one thing that helped me that I did like beforehand was I was already watching PewDiePie in English.
YouTube
So,
is the best teacher. I'm not
yeah.
going to lie. I've learned so much through YouTube. Honestly, also work related, university related. I just Google like, typing in the keywords of my university lecture, and there's so much content out there. I love it.
Yeah, if we were to lose everything and we can but we could keep one thing, I would say keep YouTube. We can relearn from that thing.
Yeah, I mean, it helped you to drive a career as a now engineer manager, so that's worth it.
Then I started doing the assignments and continued watching lectures. And since I was working, I needed to find a way how this can work together with my job, which was 2 days of work over 2 days off. So this is like a shift job. I had 14-hour shifts. It's basically you're opening restaurants, you're working full shift, you're closing the restaurant. That's why it's so long. Um, and so I didn't want to lose like 50% of my time since simply because of the my job. And so I decided to kind of find a way to integrate it. And I was taking assignments to work, and I was writing code by hand on the backside of receipts. And by the end of the shift, I would pull out like a work laptop, not my personal one, but the work one. Open the browser, and in that browser, I would open a cloud code editor, and code it there what I brainstormed during the day.
That's so
Um,
witty. I would never come up with the idea to put a piece of code on paper. Damn. Especially during your circumstances, making the best out of your time and being productive, you eventually find ways even though it's harder to manage. But if you have the drive and if you have the motivation, you can actually do anything. It's just about the time until when you reach your goal. Some people take maybe years, some people take months, but nonetheless, if you're still walking, you eventually reach the goal.
so for me, it was how can I study while working without being fired? And writing code by hand was the perfect solution because I could do it at any time and I could stop at any time. And if somebody looks at what I'm doing, I'm just writing something. Like, who cares? I can be writing something work related. Um, and so I was only pulling out laptop at the end of my shift when there were no guests and we were already closing the shift. So yeah, it worked very smoothly.
How about the content switching? Like, how were you able to focus writing code during the shift?
Oh, it's pretty easy.
Mm.
Since I spent pretty much 7 years working at restaurants, for me,
Mm-hmm.
work was already completely automated. I didn't have to think about it. It was just like I was just hands were doing, and I was thinking about the code while working.
Mm, okay. When did you get your first technical job?
It happened 1 year after I finished CS50. So I finished CS50 in early 2017. It took me around 4 or 5 months to finish.
You have to pass an exam for that?
You need to complete, I think, 8 lectures with assignments. I think there are 5 or 6 assignments, and then there is a final project. I think
Mm.
something like that. Plus, there's additional material that you can do. Um, yeah. So I did all that, and then I was like, okay, what do I do now? Like, I finished one CS course. Can I get a job? And so I tried applying, and I was even handed a test. Um, and I did it, and I didn't pass. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to learn a bit more. And the question was like, what do I do exactly? And in my head, I was like, okay, I want to do something that is between mechanical engineering and computer science. I want to do something where I can do maybe 3D graphics as well. So it's like maybe program something cool. Um, and then I thought that okay, so I need a university degree. So I returned back to this idea. Okay, I need a uni degree. How do I get that? I was really bad at sciences at school. I barely passed my final math exam at school, like really just slightly above the passing grade. Um, and so I started relearning sciences using Khan Academy. I was basically going there every day, spending some hours there. Um, Aside from that, I was doing some courses, although they were not really like related, but I found them interesting, so I did them. It was project management, entrepreneurial opportunities, and Python for data science. Did those courses. Aside from that, I read Elon Musk's biography book and a book about stoicism. So then I enrolled in a preparation course by university. It was a preparation course for like exams that help you get into a uni, and I started those courses in September. Just randomly, I learned about an Olympiad um, from a fellow student, and I enrolled into it. And there were two tracks that sounded interesting to me. One was blockchain related, and one was machine learning related. Out of those two, I knew more about blockchain already then, just because of the news and the hype, and so I enrolled in that. I passed the first stage of the Olympiad, which was complete science. I passed the second stage, which already involved some programming with blockchain, and so I basically passed two stages before the finals. So I was invited to finals, which took place in April 2018. Um, but that happened like I passed the second stage in the late 2017, and then in January 2018 I basically started going to Stack Exchange, finding questions I don't know answer for, doing research, and writing a concise answer. That was basically what I was doing every single day, 4 hours per day. I was just I realized that this is such a great opportunity for me to learn
Mm-hmm.
in a more like real world scenario, because if people ask these questions, that means that they encountered it while doing real projects. So if I find answers for them, that will be beneficial both for them and for me. It was a clear win-win, so I just did that. While answering those questions, I had to understand the technology better, so I did a lot of like personal projects. I think I did like maybe one project every day back then, just to understand the technology better, to like reverse engineer it in some places. Um, and yeah, that was like a huge boost for my knowledge, in particular in the blockchain area, because that's what I focused on.
Mm-hmm.
I've completely doubled down on that track. And yeah, in the beginning of February, I just decided, okay, let's just apply to jobs, like just for fun. I mean, let's see how it goes. And so I applied. I got two interviews. First interview I failed, and the second interview I passed. And I was hired before the finals of the Olympiad. I was hired before even enrolling into university, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll just stop learning and just focus doing my job.
You dropped the Olympiad?
I actually still went to the Olympiad,
Mm.
and we took second place there
Oh, damn.
as a team.
That's great. Hackathons and Olympiads are really great for learnings because it's practical. You have a use case, and based on that, you really dive into the topic and learn.
Yeah,
Okay, nice. And this job, what job was it?
this was a blockchain startup.
Oh,
The
nice.
product was a Kickstarter analogy, but built on Ethereum blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a rather, I mean, a pretty early stage startup. I think it was like 1 year into existence when I joined it. Um, it had around 20 employees, and I joined as a smart contract developer. And smart contracts are pieces of executable code that are stored in blockchain, which means you can't change this code, but you can execute it.
Mm-hmm. What's the benefit of that?
Um, that you know that you will always get the same result, basically.
Mm.
Um, that nobody can change. Like, for example, let's say if YouTube algorithm was on blockchain, that means that it can't be changed. It will always stay the same.
And you have been working there for how long?
Slightly over a year. Yeah, I think like 13 months. um, so I started working in February 2018, and I started participating in hackathons. I did around 7 of them that year. I uh, I slowly started learning more of the standard stack, like backend and then front end. Later on, wasn't any good at it, and then I met my mentor. It was already the second half of the year, and together with him, were refactoring the back end of the application, which was a legacy monolith, and yeah, we were using all the, let's say, better approaches, and we're fighting over every single small decision, even about syntax of the code. Uh, yeah, that was like my mentor was very direct, so he never held back any feedback. And that was very useful, although it was harsh, but it was so useful for me because I was learning a lot. Like, I learned during 3 months that we worked together on that project, I learned more than during previous, like, what, 8 months. So that was a great experience. And yeah, after that, maybe 1 or 2 months later, I decided to leave my full time job and start a startup. Because earlier in 2018, on one of the hackathons, which we won, I met my co founder, Alexander, uh, and together with whom we developed an idea of an application that allows residents to share their charging stations with drivers of electric vehicles. And so we decided to just build an app and try to launch it in Germany. That needed a lot of time, so I decided to drop off my job. I basically had savings enough to run for 1 whole year without any income, and so yeah, that's how we started. I came to Germany, to Cologne, for 1 month.
Why Germany specifically?
In Europe, if you look at the adoption of electric vehicles back in the day, which was 2018, 2019, the leaders were Norway and Netherlands, and then Germany was following right after their footsteps. But it was still not mass adoption. So that meant that we can start and we would have some time before Germany really switches its industry to electric vehicles. So for us, it seemed like a good strategical, basically, way of doing it. But yeah, it wasn't easy because both of us, Russian citizens, Alexander, my co-founder, he already moved to Germany, but he didn't have a residency. He was
Mhm.
on a visa, and I was still in Russia. And yeah, legally it was really challenging to form an entity. Um, but in every other area, we had really good progress. We found an amazing team. We had 9 people at some point, most of them engineers. And we have built a SaaS platform. We built like a system that connects with charging stations. So we integrated with multiple partners, including Schneider Electric, which is a big European vendor. And our system was tested, and we had 2 mobile apps, iOS and Android app. Um, and now the question was, how do we attract customers? And it wasn't that straightforward because it's not just, hey, visit my site and you can use this app. No, it's like we needed to target people first, those who have charging stations at their homes, willing to share it with others. And then we also needed to target those who have electric vehicles, which turned out to be really, really hard. Um, I would say many people said that, oh, this is such a great idea. I would love to do it. But then when we came to them with an application ready to use, they were like, nah, just just
That's
not
so
ready.
typical German. I mean, they really value privacy, and sharing their own private charging station is. Ooh, I can't imagine a German doing that. But yeah, so how much of that was predictable? And so was it basically a shot at the dark? And how much was things planned because it didn't turn out the way you wanted to? The company's not existing anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was the main reason is that you didn't find the target audience?
I wouldn't say that the main reason that we didn't find the target audience, the main reason was that we weren't flexible enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because we already had the software, and if we were more lean in terms of product vision, more focused on solving real problems, we would have adapted. So the main issue is that we weren't flexible enough.
Mm,
We were
okay.
too fixated on our own vision and on our own ideas and obsessed with adding new features when nobody needed those features. So that
Hmm.
was the main issue.
That's a great learning, though. I
Yeah,
mean, this is your
absolutely.
second setup, right? I mean, then afterwards you founded Codesphere.
Yes. So after the first startup, which was called Tao, we when COVID hit, things went really bad for us because I was running out of money. My team was also not that great financially. It was 1 year after making this product. We haven't tracked any investments, and COVID hit. And before COVID, we had some relationship going on with partners and investors. When COVID started, everyone went silent. And so after 1 or 2 months, we decided that we need to freeze the project. We can no longer continue maintaining it. And yeah, for me personally, I worked so much on Tao. I was working weekends, holidays. I didn't have any vacations. And it was,
When did you make the decision? I feel like it's a difference between, or there's a time gap between realizing that this is not going to work and also making the final decision to freeze the project.
oh no, it happened very fast.
Oh,
It
okay.
happened really fast. Because of the COVID.
Oh,
Like
I see. Yeah,
it
true.
made everything easier. Like if before COVID it was okay, we have a problem, let's find a solution.
Mm.
Then it was okay, nobody wants to talk to us. Nobody wants to do anything with peer to peer right now because people stay in isolation, um, and we don't have money. Yeah, it was a the environment changed so drastically. I think, yeah, probably if it wasn't COVID, we would probably have tried something else.
Hmm.
But no, the situation basically didn't allow it to. And myself, I was quite burned out by then.
You were still in
And
Russia?
yeah, still in
Hmm.
Russia. And I just took a break from work in general. I went silent on social media and messengers. I stayed at home, just started to learn some things and just do things for fun. And yeah, slowly, kind of, I started doing some freelance on the side, just working like few hours per week, and then later I met Elias. This was completely random. One investor who I asked money for Tao in the past, he connected me with Elias, who was basically just starting Codesphere with his friend Jonas, who are both now my co-founders. So
Hmm.
Elias came up with the idea together with Jonas. They already incorporated the company and attracted a pre-seed round, and just we already met with Elias before the pre-seed round was closed, and 2 months after the pre-seed, they invited me to work on Codesphere as a freelancer in the beginning because like they needed some help, technical help, and I mean I was just freelancer, I didn't care, and so I didn't really want to have a full-time job. I was still fed up from Tao, but I accepted it, and we worked together for 1 month, and during 1 month, some synergy formed between us. And so after that month, they offered me to continue working full time. And even though I didn't really want to, I really like working with them, so I accepted the offer. And that's how things started. That was before Codesphere was launched. But back then we were only like 3 engineers at the company, basically doing everything.
Honestly, it's always the people. I mean, also at Microsoft, I mean, I love my job and even sometimes work, in the evening, but if it wasn't for the people, it wouldn't be as half as much fun. So I
Absolutely.
totally get that if you have two amazing colleagues, you can basically do anything. With an amazing team, you can do the impossible.
Yeah.
You three co-founded Codesphere. What's Codesphere about?
Codesphere is a combination of a cloud editor with a um, cloud computing system. So it's like we have, let's say, AWS or Azure with cloud services, but you attach a code editor interface to it. So now what you can do is you can write your code, build it, and deploy it all in the cloud. So you don't have to switch from your local environment and push your changes somewhere remote, wait for them to build, and then deploy them. No, you do it all in the same place, and you don't need to configure anything. It's scalable out of the box.
So it's like Google Docs when you open an online docs at Google and then just type in, yeah, a text. The thing is, oh, okay, well, that's great. So which problem does it solve in the tech industry specifically?
So there are multiple problems. The main ones are, first, for many companies, especially startups, um, managing and setting up infrastructure is very expensive. So what we do is we take care of that.
Hmm.
We automate it and we simplify it to the point where anyone can use it, and it will be scalable, and it will uh, basically do what 95% of the companies need. Um, and the second thing is more related to the development. We as developers, like, it's a de facto standard for the industry. It's still the way the majority does it. We develop locally on our laptops or computers, and then we push our changes somewhere remote. And operating systems are different. Like, my laptop has macOS, somebody has Windows, somebody has Linux, somebody has Arch Linux, and all of these environments, they require certain changes in the code. So there's always a difference. And if you forget to adapt your system for somebody else's operating system, there will be issues. There will be bugs which weren't expected and weren't caught by you when you were developing locally. So what you want is, you want to have a parity between the environments. So the closer the development environment is
Mm.
to production environment, the better. And so when you are developing in the cloud, all environments are the same.
So you facilitate collaboration within
Yes,
teams. I mean, I've been a DevOps engineer working student before. I mean, that would replace the role, basically.
exactly.
That's dangerous for DevOps engineers.
Yeah, or we're
Um,
coming for them.
and your target audience are startups then? How do you get the clients?
Um, yeah, the target audience is primarily startups because they have the highest pain. Of course, it will still work for small and medium-sized companies. It will work for private developers because as a private person, it's like a huge benefit for you. You can just write code and deploy it and just
Hmm.
show it to someone. Like if you need to demo a project, you already have a running environment. You don't need to configure anything. Um, in our sales process, we primarily target startups
Hmm.
and e-commerce shops.
If I had a small medium business, why would I choose Codesphere over AWS and Azure? It's because it gets faster to deployment.
Simplicity is the main
Hmm.
factor.
Okay.
If you go to AWS, you will probably need someone to configure it for you.
Hmm.
And then if you need to become more scalable, you will need to adjust the configuration, which is not that straightforward.
But that depends on
Um,
the service itself, doesn't it? If it's an infrastructure as a service, SaaS or service as a service or platform as a service.
yeah, of course. Right now, the cloud providers they started rolling out some products that are like more scalable and
Hmm.
easier to use. But still, the majority of customers that we spoke with, they're still running on very old infra. So
Hmm.
the market still haven't fully adopted the easier and scalable deployments.
And I guess that also CodeSphere is is a cheaper solution as well.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that we're necessarily cheaper than them.
Hmm.
We're definitely cheaper than Heroku. Um, Probably cheaper than Azure. Not sure if we're cheaper than AWS
Hmm.
then though.
Okay, and then your benefit would be the simplicity.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you providing cloud by yourself? Or is there an underlying provider?
So we have a provider, but it's not a cloud provider. It's a provider of servers. Like we
Oh,
rent bare metal servers, and we have our infrastructure configured on them and running on them.
no, I see. So let's come to your role as an engineer manager. What's the typical life of such a manager, and are your decisions based on technical or business aspects?
As an engineering manager, I have a development department. I run the development department of
Hmm.
Codesphere. Currently, I have around 12 engineers, two designers. Um, and my main duty is to organize processes in a way that the department can operate pretty much autonomously without me interfering. So it's a lot of work on building ownership in the teams. It's a lot of work on like documenting technical processes and certain guides. Um, I built a structure. So inside of my department, we have multiple teams. And that is so that we have simplified communication because the less
Hmm.
people you have in a team, the easier it is communicate. The less people you need to keep in sync. Um, and my daily job is basically attending some meetings, both with management and with my department, doing code reviews, doing design document reviews, um, thinking about the process and improving the process. And of course, I also code, but I wouldn't say I code more than, I would say on average, it would be like maybe 20% of my time is coding.
Hmm. Your role as a manager is more focused on the organization and the structure rather than people management.
For me, organization structure and people management are very close.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, a good structure helps with managing people.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So when it comes to hiring, I'm doing all the interviews. I'm trying to find the right fit for the company, both in terms of technical knowledge and also culture. Um, because what is great about Codesphere is that since very early days, we have cultivated a culture of respect and directness, and we really want to keep it that way. So
Hmm.
that's why we're very careful when we're bringing on a new person. We ensure that they have a cultural fit.
Oh, that's nice. I was actually talking to my own mentor about that because he also has a startup and he sees the challenge and scaling up the team because it's very hard to maintain a great culture while expanding.
Yeah, and we
S-
went from 3 engineers to 30 in one
Oh damn!
year.
Oh damn!
Yeah. Right now we shrank a little bit because of the
Hmm.
current market situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, like last year we were not engineers, 30 employees in the company. So we scaled quite a lot in just one year, and we had to make a lot of decisions and build a lot of new processes very fast. Um, we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, but by basically by mid of last year, we already started to work in a more structured way, with most processes in place, and yeah, it became only better after that.
How do you stay up to date with learning and also the latest cloud technologies, especially in your role as a manager?
Um, so I would say there are multiple things that help me stay up to date. Number one is my colleagues. I have some very experienced engineers r- around me in my team. I learn a lot from them. And the second thing is I'm running a LinkedIn. I post content on LinkedIn, and by doing that, I basically force myself to learn new things because I wanted to share with my network, like, because I always start with asking myself how can I bring value to people, and yeah, usually it's just talking about some new tech or about my personal experience. And yeah, so I'm kind of like I have to be up to date.
I love the internet for that, honestly. I mean, I've learned also so much from the internet. And I mean, also my LinkedIn feed is full of today I learned. So it's a one pager, a template where you learn a new architecture, takes like 5 minutes, and then you're smarter than before. And I wouldn't have found you on LinkedIn if it wouldn't have posted so much. So that's the internet just in general, social media. I mean, there are obviously also downsides on it, but there's a huge potential, and we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. So
I would say internet is still kind of like undervalued. I think. I mean, most of like many people are just using internet for wrong things. It's like,
depends on,
but
yeah, that's true. That's But it got certainly better. The social media industry, or just in general, the whole like YouTube thing, content creating, it's booming right now.
yeah,
You can still hit the wave. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it's a huge opportunity which is missed. That's my opinion. But I mean, I'm also in the very beginning with the podcast right now. Let's see where it goes. But I think it's very scary also for a lot of people, including me, because it's basically a black box. You have so much uncertainty. You don't know where you're heading. You can reach literally everyone in the world. Like if you post yourself or some content online, it would be accessible for everyone who has internet. So the probability of new opportunities are very, very high. And you don't even know where you will be in a couple of months or years when posting things online.
yeah, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, that what makes it fun, exactly. So I mean, if life is unpredictable, it's fun. It's risky, but it's fun. But that's I think also very inspiring for me. I mean, you didn't you I mean, your entire life you didn't know where you were heading. You were just having a drive or motivation, and then visioning a goal, and you even failed. I mean, that's you had a startup, You coded, you had hackathons, and you were just trying, and still you managed to find your way, and you're another country. That's very inspiring to me. What's the what's the secret of coding? What was the biggest learnings in the past 10 years you had for someone as an advice you would give who just starts their journey?
When you solve problems, you will be struck by frustration because no matter how good you are, at some point you'll encounter a problem that is just too hard for you, and you won't be able to solve it immediately, and it will take a lot of time for you to learn and adapt to be able to solve this problem. It can take days, weeks, or months, and what you have to do is you need to be patient. Patience is a lot, and a lot of people quit because of that, but that's what computer science is all about. You're encountering a hard problem and you persist through it until you solve it, and I promise you, if you do that, you will be so proud of yourself, and you will become more confident after that and over time.
Perseverance is key, consistency is key.
Yeah, pretty much in everything.
Yeah, I also I heard from a software engineer. He said like if you can sit for many hours in front of a computer and code, no matter what, you eventually that's your job. Like if you can do this, software engineering is your job. Otherwise, if you don't enjoy it, then quit. That's what he said.
Yeah, that would be quite challenging to sit in front of the computer for many hours per day if you didn't really like it.
And also general advice for young people who strive for a career, not specifically in the tech industry, but someone who also co-founded his own startup.
Get ready to fail a lot. Get comfortable with receiving rejections and getting criticized. Um, don't ignore it. You need to listen to it, but you also need to uh, basically learn how to handle failures, because I failed way more in my life than I succeeded. And yeah, sometimes you just have to fail, and we say you need to fail forward.
And
So
that's the interesting part because that's the only thing we see from you. We see that you made your journey as a barista. Now you're a co-founder of a startup. You're Forbes 30 under 30. You're an engineer manager, and that's all we see. But the struggle you had is just non-existent until you talk about it.
yeah.
By the way, last question. What does it mean to be Forbes 30 under 30? When do you get nominated, or how does it work? Like, what is this award about?
Um, somebody nominates you. Yeah. That's all. That's all I know. Somebody nominates you, then Forbes reached out to you,
Oh,
gives you a
nice.
form to fill out, and that's it.
Wow. Do you have any benefits from that?
Yeah, you have access to their events.
Oh, nice. And
Yeah, so networking.
do you attend it?
I didn't, but my co-founder Elias did. I think already twice.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a community.
Raman, spasibo. Thank you so much for the interview.
Пожалуйста. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I genuinely hope you liked this episode. As I just started my journey as a podcaster, please provide me any kind of feedback. Your suggestions help me to improve. And if you would like to support my podcast, feel free to have a look in the descriptions. A small coffee donation really makes a difference. Thank you so much, and hear you next time. Bye.